Jorob diss me? Let's listen to this for day. Let's see. Dr. Seuss, Speedy, LePew.
What we have seen now is that our First Amendment press, the people who love the First Amendment the most, those folks have decided that cancel culture literally does not exist. It is not a reality. It does not exist in any way, shape, or form. And if you talk about it, it's because you're trying to distract. You really shouldn't be talking about cancellation and destruction and book burning. You shouldn't talk about any of that stuff. Because if you talk about that stuff, it's a distraction from the real issues. Now, let's be quite clear about this. The book burning, the cancellation, all it is designed to do is create an ever-changing standard, a constantly shifting and moving line that anybody could find themselves on the wrong side of at any time. Because what that does is it creates an innate level of power for the institutional left. If they can cancel you at any time for any reason, then everybody lives in fear. They self-censor, which is what happened with the Dr. Seuss estate, right? They pulled down these books that were supposedly racist, which again, millions of people have read to their children. None of those, if anyone can provide me a study on how Dr. Seuss made kids more racist, I'm willing to hear it. Seriously, bring it. Bring me a piece of data. Name me the member of the alt-right who grew up looking at the page of If I Ran the Zoo over and over and over again to decide on white supremacy.
Very interesting. It's very interesting that, like, Ben Shapiro feels like it needs to be, like, the absolute worst type of racism for it to be considered racist, right? Like, I think that, like, I don't know. It's hard to say, because when it comes to Dr. Seuss books, they portray different people in, like, kind of like a stereotypical way. I don't know that portraying people in a stereotypical way is necessarily fully racist, right? Like, I don't know. Usually that stereotype is some kind of like cultural thing, right? Like they'll show like they'll show like a Chinese person like holding chopsticks, and is that racist? I don't know. I guess I just don't know as a white person. By today's standards, it might be though. So I don't think that it's necessarily wrong to discontinue the book. We can say that Dr. Seuss books aren't racist and still support their removal. Like, we can be historically accurate and go like, oh, okay, so these Dr. Seuss books I wouldn't consider them racist at the time when it was more appropriate to say, like, to display caricatures of different people's, like, you know, races. But like now, maybe it's dated. Now, do I think so? I don't know. But like, you know, just because it doesn't have to defeat white supremacy in order for it to call out racism. You know?
It doesn't exist because that's stupid. Okay, same thing with McGillicuddy's Pool, which has like a fish that looks like an Eskimo, and this is supposed to be terrible. And to think that I saw it on Mulberry Street, which has a picture of a Chinese person holding chopsticks. Like, that has not made any single human being in the United States more racist. None. Okay, but if you sound off about this, then this means that you are racist yourself, right? And if you sound off about cancel culture generally, it's because you're not okay with American change, right? This is the case that I was talking about last week that was made repeatedly by members of the media. That really, if you're against things being canceled, what you're really in favor of is the racism, is the brutality, is the cruelty. Okay, cancel culture doesn't exist. So CNN had an entire segment with John Avlon and Margaret Hoover slamming the GOP and Fox News for focusing on Dr. Seuss. So, again.
I mean, cancel culture certainly exists. I don't know that Dr. Seuss was cancel culture, though. I mean, it might be like a virtue signal from the company, yeah. Because I don't think anybody gave a fuck about Dr. Seuss. I think that like it was like a virtue signal, maybe for more attention. I don't think anybody was actually trying to cancel Dr. Seuss. But like, just because things are removed doesn't make it cancel culture. You know what I mean? Like, I think Gina Carano got canceled. That's like cancel culture. That's when like progressives, far leftist progressives, like a fringe group of them, decide that they're offended by something, so they remove it. That's a little bit different from a company deciding that their content is outdated.
It wasn't the GOP and Fox News that decided to get 6 Dr. Seuss books canceled. It was the left that decided to do that.
Who?
And then the right said, I thought book burning.
Who on the left? Like, who was doing that? Because there was no, I mean, maybe I'm wrong. But there was nobody on the left that I heard of at all. Like, in any capacity. Like, I didn't hear, like, there was no news of, like, oh, such and such on the left is trying to cancel Dr. Seuss. Like, it was like, no, Dr. Seuss came out themselves. What the fuck is he talking about?
Burning was bad. And then the left says, why are you even focusing on book burning? Because book burning is bad. Let me explain it real slow for you.
But this is like metaphorical book burning. Like, this isn't actually throwing a book into a fire. This is like them discontinuing the sales of their thing. And then like eBay deciding to like fucking not sell it anymore, which is weird because there's a virtue signal again, because there's a lot of racist things on eBay you can buy. But, you know, it's not cancel culture. this is performative activist culture from big business, if anything. That's the bigger problem, right? And I'm not saying they shouldn't be doing these things. Like, I think it's perfectly reasonable for Dr. Seuss to pull their publication. I think eBay is the one virtue signaling. And that's like a different conversation to have, which is not what we're having. We're just boiling everything down to cancel culture for outrage.
Book burning is bad. But apparently, even paying attention to it is just a distraction tactic. Here are the geniuses over at CNN.
Let's have a reality check about Dr. Seuss for 1 second. And I love Dr. Seuss. Was not canceled, okay? His estate decided they would stop publishing several books because they contained illustrations that most people, if looking at them objectively, would say, ooh, that's pretty racist. Now, you can debate on individual books, but let's have the individual images that cause the estate of Dr. Seuss to feel uncomfortable and have people defend them. This is not a cancel culture moment. This is a distraction play, and it should not be occupying so much headspace.
Okay, so this is the move that folks on the left like to make when they actually want to restrict rights. Think back to Charlie Hebdo. Remember the Charlie Hebdo shooting? So Islamist terrorists decided to murder a bunch of people at the French, essentially Mad Magazine Charlie Hebdo, because they drew a perverse picture of Muhammad in a sex act or something. And do you remember that the hashtag I am Charlie Hebdo trended in the West? Because the idea was that you may not like Charlie Hebdo. They drew a bunch of stuff that was, I thought, extraordinarily anti-Israel, bordering on the anti-Semitic. Okay, but they have every right to do that. I am Charlie Hebdo. The idea was that even stuff that you don't like ought to be defended as an exercise of free rights. Now, the move by CNN is the opposite. If you are not willing to defend a single Dr. Seuss page, right, the one that people are upset about, then this means that you are actually a hypocrite, right? You have to defend the page in order to defend the right of that book to still be distributed. Now, I'll be completely honest with you.
What?
I'm willing to defend If I Ran the Zoo as a book. I am willing to defend and to think that I saw it on Mulberry Street on the basis of a simple fact. Those books have not produced more racism in American society by any measurable level. By any measurable, you cannot find an individual who's been made more racist by If I Ran the Zoo. Not one.
Yeah, it doesn't think that. I don't think that matters. That argument would matter if people were actually trying to cancel the book, but nobody did. They just decided to do it themselves. So, like,
Not a single human. Okay, in other words, you're looking for things to be offended by, and then when you find something that you are offended by, you say, isn't this objectively offensive? And then people who were never offended by it before, they go back and they're like, oh, that does look kind of uncomfortable. And then they say, let's get rid of the literature. That is not the way a free society...
So if this happened in the right way, if Ben Shapiro was actually right, which he's not, if this was doing the right way, if somebody actually tried to cancel Dr. Seuss and then they put that out there, and then like the media doubled down on it to like defend it like they did with Gina Carano, that would be one thing. But again, Dr. Seuss decided that they didn't like the depictions that they made in those books, and they're like, oh, let's discontinue them. Now, maybe they did it just to be fucking performative. I don't know. We can't speculate on that, but like, it doesn't matter.
Society ought to operate. Instead, people ought to be able to consume what they want to consume. And by the way, people can use their best judgment and know these materials are not making people more racist. It's absurd. It's an absurd contention. It always was an absurd contention. But the idea from CNN now is that if you don't love that particular picture in a Dr. Seuss book, how dare you criticize the Dr. Seuss estate for taking this stuff down? Okay, so Kevin McCarthy, the GOP leader, he decided to defend Dr. Seuss. He would read Green Eggs and Ham, which doesn't make a ton of sense to me because Green Eggs and Ham is not one of the books being canceled. I would have read, and to think I saw it on Mulberry Street, or If I Ran the Zoo, I would have just gotten up here and I just would have read it. Because again, even if I don't love those particular images, even I could see why somebody might find them offensive.
Somebody said that they literally did try to cancel Dr. Seuss. The company didn't wake up and say, let me remove them. Just go find me the articles that were supporting cancel culture and Dr. Seuss. Go find them to me and link them to me before they were removed. Because you didn't hear about it at all. Because if that was true, Ben Shapiro would be making a video about, oh my God, they're trying to cancel Dr. Nobody knew about any of this. It was just very sudden.
They have not offended generations of children or made anybody racist. Okay, but Jake Tapper tweeted out, one of the weirdest parts of this culture war is that the self-styled warriors are unwilling to stand by the empirically racist images they're supposedly defending. Green Eggs and Ham is not one of the books the Dr. Seuss Foundation has decided to stop publishing. Okay, now here is where it gets weird. You don't even have to defend those books to defend the right of those books to be distributed. Right? You don't. You can actually say, I don't like those books. I don't want those books in my house, but people should be able to buy those books. That is true for virtually all books. And I think there are tons of books that offend me and I think are annoying and stupid. I don't think they should be banned. I think that, objectively speaking, virtually all books written by members of the New York Times op-ed page are moronic. I don't think any of those should be banned. It's a bizarre contention, right? It's the same contention as we should get rid of freedom of speech because some people say the N-word. Okay, so I think that freedom of speech protects people saying the N-word. That doesn't mean they're protected from societal consequence, but freedom of speech does protect the N-word. Am I defending the N-word? No, I think
the problem with this argument here is that he just said that there's freedom of speech of not of consequences. So, like, I just don't understand. The government's not banning Dr. Seuss. So they have freedom of speech. I don't understand. When we talk about freedom of speech, cancel culture is never a conversation on a governmental level. It's just so weird what you're saying, because by that logic, like, cancel culture is literally about defending people outside of like actual governmental freedom of speech. Cancel culture is about saying, okay, what they said was like, nobody's actually saying ban Gina Carano from being able to speak. They're saying that she shouldn't have a platform because of what she said, which goes along with what you just said of freedom of speech, freedom of consequences. Cancel culture isn't about contesting freedom of consequences. Okay, it's about drawing the line of what those consequences should be based on what we say. So, like, you're all over the place. It's just fucking so, you're everywhere. You're all over the place with this. You're not even being logically consistent.
The N-word is awful and evil. I don't think anybody should use it, black, white, or green. And I do understand the differences.
Why the green, though? Like, what the black, white, or green thing? You know, like, I agree. I don't think anybody should say it either. But like, what? That's just so weird. It's always weird when people who are like, I don't care if you're fucking teal or cyan or any of the imposter colors, I don't think you should say it. It's like, yeah, I don't think so either. But it's just a weird way to. I don't know. Maybe I'm just being weird about it. My sushi's fun.
Between people of different races using it. Okay, but I don't like the N-word. I think it's an ugly word, and I think it should be extirpated from our use of language. Does that mean that you don't have the right to say it? Of course you have the right to say it. You don't have to defend material in order to understand there is a right to use material or see material.
It's like a weird thing. It's like you couldn't have come up with a better example. Like is it not like weird? Like he's like, okay, I need to compare the canceling of Dr. Seuss to something. Let me go with the N-word. Why not something else? Why not Gina Carano? She's literally on your show. But like you went right to like this, like, yeah, you know, I don't know. Maybe I'm reaching too much. But if I looked into this a little bit more deeply, like, is this like you being like, yeah, the N-word's okay? Like, I know he's saying it's not, but it is. But why that example? You could have used any other example. Weird.
It's an absurdity. Okay, but the move of the left is twofold. One is, you're not even willing to defend that picture, so that picture shouldn't exist. And two is, why are you even worrying about all this stuff? Sure, we're trying to cancel random stuff, but, you know, what are you worried about? And the answer is, as you keep evolving the standard so as to maximize your own power, there is no standard. The standard just continues to get broader and broader. So over the weekend, we saw an attempt now to go after Speedy Gonzales and Pepe Le Pew. Right? Notice how they're going after all the kids' stuff. Right? The reason they're going after all the kids' stuff is because they only want their standards taught in school. So it is very dangerous for a kid ever to watch a Pepe Le Pew cartoon, but it is also dangerous for you not to teach your 4-year-old boy that he might be a 4-year-old girl. In fact, it is mandatory that you teach your child about cross-dressing when they're 5. No,
it's not. Not at all. Not at all. You're really making a weird argument. Like, I agree. Like, there are some people on the left that are like trying to allow their kids to choose their gender, which is ridiculous, right? Kids can't do that. And there's an environmental aspect there too. Right? Nothing wrong with teaching your kids your values. But I can see why. And I think that Pepe Le Pew should be rebranded to make a joke out of what he does. But that's a separate conversation from like the gender conversation. Pepe Le Pew is somebody, whether you like it or not, that teaches kids that like it's funny to be overly persistent with women. Right? It's true. And like, it's just a joke. I get it. Man, I do it all the time, right? But even I'm learning that like, just a joke isn't a good argument. So instead, like my defense, like, so I would rather not cancel Pepe Le Pew. What I think we should do is we should use him as like a standard to criticize people who like think it's appropriate to like make inappropriate advances at women. That would be better. Like that's how you teach kids. You teach kids through story. So if they see a character hitting on a girl and then they get the fuck beaten out of them, they'll be like, oh, that's a bad thing. But that's not what you're saying. You're like, you know what? It's okay that Pepe Le Pew sexually harasses women because some people think that gender doesn't exist. And it's like, well, that's a very bizarre argument.
Very important that you teach your kid about the virtues of cross-dressing. But if they watch a Bugs Bunny cartoon in which he cross-dresses for humorous purposes, then this is very bad and, in fact, terrible. And you can't do that. Don't worry. They're not trying to control your kid's mind. They're not trying to control how your kids are brought up. The same culture that says that Cardi B is excellent for teenagers says they cannot read a doc.
Pepe Le Pew in the scene that they canceled him over was in the movie was actually meant to teach younger kids not to. Okay, yeah. So, like, I would defend that. I'd be like, why are they canceling Pepe Le Pew? Can you show me that somehow? Can you show me an article? That would be phenomenal.
Dr. Seuss book, lest they become racist. Yeah, I don't trust you guys. Well, Jahad Ali, who's an idiot columnist for the Daily Beast, he said, we are fighting about Speedy Gonzales, Dr. Seuss, and Potato Head. The right wing is raising funds off it and will use it in 2022 for elections. 0 Republicans voted for the relief bill. Over 500,000 people are dead. There is a recession. What a dumb, nutty country. Well, I mean, first of all, why should they vote for the crappy relief bill? It was a bad relief bill. Over 500,000 people are dead and would be dead regardless of whether you were canceling people. It turns out that book burning is a bad idea. And so is going back and removing old cartoons. And you can show these to your kids or not show them to your kids, and you can contextualize them or not contextualize them. It is my job to raise my kid, not your job to raise my kid. This is the push.
Very interesting. Because like I said, we talk about the line that we need to draw. When it comes to raising your kid, as a society, we actually do tell people how to raise their kids. It's to the extent in which we believe that that's true. Right? So you can't beat the shit out of your kid. The government will get involved. We all agree on that. Right? You shouldn't be able to, do any, like, you shouldn't be able to just not give them an education. You shouldn't be able to pull them out of school and be like, fuck this, no education for you. No. Society steps in, they take your kids away. You can't be a negligent parent and not feed your kid, of course. So it is up to society to set some standards on how you raise your kid. Now, I'm not saying that he's wrong. I'm going to raise my kid. Like, I'm not going to allow my son to wear a dress. When he gets old enough and gets out of the house, he can do, actually, not even that. Like, if he's like 12 years old and he still wants to wear a fucking dress, I'll probably let him wear a dress. Whatever. But, like, that's a defensible point. There's a difference. You understand what I'm saying? Like, not everything, like, fundamentally what you're saying. We do as a society tell people how to raise each other's kids. We criticize people constantly.
And again, if you think it's going to end with, like, a few Dr. Seuss books, here's the thing. They already showed their neck. They're going to come for Cat in the Hat. You know that's next. Right? They've already accused Cat in the Hat of minstrelsy in some bizarre iteration. Again, but don't worry. It's all in your head. Cancel culture doesn't exist. There's a piece by A.J. Willingham over at CNN called It's Time to Cancel This Talk of Cancel Culture. What exactly is cancel culture? Is it someone getting fired for harassment or problematic views? No, that's a workplace doing its job. Oh, is that what it is? Even though you didn't define problematic. Is it a popular figure losing fans or affiliations because of past actions? No, that's the power of public opinion. Or it's cancellation depending on the content of the past actions and its impact on their current job. My favorite part of this particular piece from CNN is that they actually cite, this idiot author actually cites Gina Carano as not being canceled because we hired her at Daily Wire. She was canceled, and then we hired her.
You hired her?
And what do you not understand about this? But again, if you point out that there is a censorious move on the left, then you are somehow either delusional or participating in cruelty and malice. By the way, as far as Pepe Le Pew goes, the entire joke of Pepe Le Pew is that he was a pervert. That was the entire joke. Yeah. He loses. Pepe Le Pew is a bad guy. That's the whole point of his character.
I don't think anybody thinks Pepe Le Pew is a bad guy. He's certainly the butt end of a joke. But I don't think anybody thinks he's a bad guy. If that's what you think the intention of Pepe Le Pew is, I think that I don't know what the fuck to tell you, bro. I don't know how the hell you even got to that point. How the hell did you even get there? He's not a bad guy. He's like he's a funny character. It's funny to be a little predatory towards women, right? That's the joke. I'm not trying to be all preachy. I'm just saying, like, Pepe Le Pew, not to get all woke, is like an aspect of like rape culture. Normalizing and thinking it's funny to be like overzealous with women.
People like Pepe Le Pew forwards rape culture. Again, show me the person who watched Pepe Le Pew and then raped somebody. Is this common in the rapist community?
It's just like the most retarded thing I've ever heard. I'm not. That's just the most retarded thing I've ever heard. Just what? Like what does that mean? what he's trying to say is like, oh, show me somebody that watched Pepe Le Pew, got up, and then went and raped somebody. That's just stupid. Honestly, it's so stupid. Like, it's about like this idea of like suggesting. We teach people through stories. Stories at their core are to teach people things, right? So you teach kids. When you teach kids that it's funny to be like overly aggressive, it creates situations where women are like, a lot of the women that I've talked to that were sexually assaulted, raped, it was not intentional. I know that sounds so bizarre. Really ask women, like, hey, like a lot of times it's like, oh, I wasn't comfortable saying no. He was really persistent, even though I said no, but like he still did it. And like they weren't super aggressive against it because they were afraid because of like that power dynamic between men and women. Yeah, you know, a lot of times, or like it doesn't even have to be men and women. Like there's times where like it's a person of authority, and like there's so many nuances to like these things, and like promoting a concept that it's like okay and funny to like be aggressive with women and overly persistent it's not a positive. I don't understand. At this point it just seems like defending cancellation at any cost. Like that's weird. That's a weird thing to me. Like that there's no nuance. It could be anything. It's to Ben, unless somebody runs outside and yells the N-word to somebody, it's not worthy of some form of cancellation. And I'm with him on the Gina Carano thing. Like everything else, it's just ridiculous.
Community, I'm unaware. It seems to me that if you're going to connect content with effect, which is what you guys love to do, right?
Yeah.
You like to suggest that Donald Trump is responsible for a riot on the Capitol because he said stuff, and then people ignore.
Well, that's the stuff that he said was that like the election was stolen from him. There's no factual foundation. I find it interesting that Ben in this conversation has constantly told us to give him facts on how particular things happen, but then proposes that like defends Donald Trump for not giving facts and saying something happened, right? So like there's no factual foundation for the fact that Donald Trump, like there's no defensible position. There was no wide-scale voter fraud. And like apparently to Ben Shapiro, that's not true. I don't understand. Like, yeah, like no, he definitely did rile people up.
The peaceful part and when rioted at the Capitol. But the content was connected with the action. So show me how the content was connected with the action with Pepe Le Pew. Show me the rapist who was desperately watching Pepe Le Pew late at night and then decided to go participate in quote-unquote rape culture.
I just feel like you're just
it's so bizarre. And again, there's no end to it, of course.
A little too kooky.
When they say that Dr. Seuss, so the original defense of the whole Dr. Seuss thing was, don't worry, we're just stopping the distribution of new books, but you can still go to the library and get the books. CBS then called up libraries and asked whether they would remove Dr. Seuss books. Okay, which is when journalists do this sort of stuff, when they call up libraries, when they get the intelligent idea to start calling places and asking whether they're going to remove material, that is not journalism, that is activism. It's a soft way of pressure.
This is a fair point. We're 10 minutes in. It's the only point that he's made is reasonable. Like, no, journalists shouldn't be going around pressuring libraries. And if that's true, I don't even know if it's true, but if it is true, journalists shouldn't be calling libraries and pressuring them into, like, removing Dr. Seuss. That's a little bit silly. If anything, with Dr. Seuss, I feel like those books belong in a museum, honestly, if you really think about it. Because I think that I think the museums are really good for contextualizing history. And like, that's what the Dr. Seuss is. Like those books is like contextualizing history, like contextualizing the idea of like, unintentionally promoting like negative stereotypes and showing us where we are and how much progress we've made as a society.
Bring these libraries into doing just that. So they called up these places, and as it turns out, yes, there are now libraries that are going to start removing this stuff. Okay, that was breaking as of this morning. There are libraries who are going to start removing these books from the shelves so that you cannot see these terrible, terrible images. And if you think it stops there, it doesn't, of course. LeVar Burton, who used to be the Reading Rainbow guy. Now LeVar Burton's the ban the reading guy. He says, there's some Twain books that don't age particularly well. Maybe you should ban Huck Finn.
Talk about how you've seen this evolve over time. I'm sure there are books that maybe you've read or seen that were, popular or bestsellers that in retrospect you might look at and go, that didn't age very well.
Sure. Well, I mean, there are plenty. Tom Sawyer, Huck Finn.
They didn't age very well, guys. I mean, if they didn't age very well, probably we should remove them. Probably that's the best particular thing we could do.
Yeah, maybe, yeah. I don't know. I don't know much about Huckleberry Finn, but this concept that we can't remove things because they didn't age well is weird. Why can't we? Slavery didn't age very well. Should we remove that? No. Why would we do that? That's so silly. Hey, unequal rights between people. That didn't age well. Should we remove that? No, I think we should keep it. It's like what's the damaging from removing these Dr. Seuss books? I just don't understand. It's just weird. Ben must have really loved those books.
You just get rid of material. And we can indoctrinate your children at the same time by virtue of just cleansing the marketplace. We can just cleanse it. This is why California is now proposing to ban boys and girls sections at big retailers. You literally will be able, you'll go to a toy store and they won't have boys and girls sections anymore. It'll be banned. You'll be punished for saying that boys and girls are different. Even though
you think that we went a little far. What did he say?
Boys and girls cleanse it. This is why California is now proposing to ban boys and girls sections at big retailers.
Let's see what we have here. Okay. California bill would ban boys and girls toy sections in big department stores. A bill introduced in California legislature would require large department stores to stop divvying up toys and child care items to boys and girls. In states like California, we hope to inspire an example for okay. All the skill set in the bill. 500 more employees, Jesus. I mean, it's well intentioned. So this apparently is true. So this is like a weird one because like so the reason that we have so this is like one of those things like a toppling effect. We have boys and girls toys because boys and girls tend to like different toys, right? And so their idea of like banning it, which is stupid to ban it, is like, well, it's discouraging some girls from getting into some things. Like if a girls would play more with like wood shop stuff, they would be fine. Like they would maybe be more encouraged to do wood shop. The idea is that like women and men boys and girls are excluded from particular things from a young age because they're bred into a certain way. The thing is like, boys like particular toys, girls like other toys. We don't need to eradicate the concept of boys and girls liking toys. What we need to do is create a safe environment for boys and girls to be okay with like to consume the toys of girls and boys, right? Like, so it should be okay for a girl to want to buy a boy toy or vice versa. That's the social thing. This is stupid legislation, but me agreeing that legislation sucks doesn't negate anything else that I've said.
You literally you'll go to a toy store and they won't have boys and girls sections anymore. It'll be banned. You'll be punished for saying that boys and girls are different. Even though,
and then we kind of we kind of went to this weird spot where it's like if they ban those things, all of a sudden like my free speech dies, which it doesn't. Like I could go to the store and be like, oh, there's no boys and girls. And I could be like, oh, this is still a boy toy. Like, nope, the police aren't going to come in to shoot me because I said that like this is a boy toy, even though they don't have that sectionalized in the department store.
Boys and girls are different, and they don't like the same toys. I have a boy, I have two girls, and they don't like the same toys. And it makes it easier for me to shop when the toys are segregated by gender.
Sure.
That does not mean that I can't go over to the boy section and buy my kid a skateboard. I literally bought my daughter a skateboard yesterday.
Cool.
Okay, kind of a boy toy. So what? It's fine. But the notion that it's doing some sort of some terrible cycle.
Ben's almost there. He's halfway there to being like, yeah, it's okay for girls to do a boy thing or a boy to do a girl thing. He's almost there. He just won't say it. He's not going to say it, though. He should. Just be like, yeah, come on.
Logical harm, horrible harm. To have a boys and girls section of a toy store is idiotic in the extreme. But this is the culture we want. It has to do with indoctrination. It has to do with cramming down a particular vision of society. And it extends over into the tech sphere as well, by the way. Apparently, both Google and Urban Dictionary are now censoring particular terminology.
Okay.
One of those pieces of terminology that they are censoring is the term blue anon. So the term blue anon, which was used recently by our friend Candace Owens, that term refers to all the conspiracy theories the left has bought into over the past few years, right? Everything from the Russia collusion hoax to the Brett Kavanaugh rape stuff to Jussie Smollett to all of that.
Let's see what we got. Let's see. A loosely organized group of Democrat voters, politicians, and media personalities who spread left-wing conspiracy theories such as Russia hoax, Jussie Smollett hoax, Ukraine hoax, Kids hoax and Brett Kavanaugh hoax. To the Russia hoax, there was actually like a reasonable foundation to investigate. It was a problem that they weaponized it and politicized that, but the investigation was necessary. Jesse Smollett was a douchebag. The Ukraine hoax. Okay. So that was the Ukraine hoax was what, when Donald Trump like said that he wasn't like he leveraged money. I forget what it's called, but money to Ukraine for them to investigate Joe Biden was actually like very, very credible. I don't know what the fuck Covington kids hoax is. I guess we could look that up. I don't even know what this is. I have no fucking idea. We'll just say that they're right because I don't know what it is. So give Ben the win. Brett Kavanaugh, yeah, that was kind of a hoax. I mean, it wasn't a good situation. It's definitely a conversation to have about sexual assault culture or rape culture in the United States. But Brett Kavanaugh didn't rape that girl. Even by her own account, he definitely sexually harassed her and was too aggressive. You know, that's I guess, a whole other conversation. But yeah, okay.
So Google and Urban Dictionary literally removed that term, blue anon. They took it down.
Did they? Wait, I just looked at what blue anon was on Urban Dictionary. What the fuck is he talking about? Like when you look on Google, I don't see it. It's something, apparently blue anon is a skateboarding company. That's like the top result. Oh, look, it restored it. How old is his video? I don't want to like take him out of context or anything. How old is this video? This video is from March 8th. It's now March 10th, so maybe they restored it after. Okay, so fair enough. He was right at the time.
I've never heard of a word being banned at any of these places, but apparently Google has censored searches for blue anon. You cannot even search for it now. Also, by the way, Google totally games its own system. Google is actively suppressing search results that do not acquiesce to traditional viewpoints of the left. I recommend that you install DuckDuckGo on your computer rather than Google as a way to combat all of this.
I already do.
So the left is changing how you can receive information.
See?
They're teaching what kind of materials your children can access. So yay on the transgender propaganda, nay on the old Dr. Seuss books. And we are all supposed to just acquiesce to this and pretend that this is not in any way a violation of individual freedom or a change to the culture that is bad. We're supposed to just say, well, you know, that's the way the world works. Or we could stand up and just say no. That's the other thing we could do. Facts don't care about your feelings. And
that's a rough take from you, Ben. Specifically saying that you champion facts.